Last episode, we left off inside a Canadian courtroom. For everyone watching, that should have been the end of the story. The respected pastor, the theologian, the man who had spent years helping international students, was finally exposed. Or so it seemed. Because after Jay's testimony, John would spend nearly 3 years behind bars. He would lose his church, career, and reputation. Almost everything he had spent his entire life building. But here's the question. If the evidence was really that overwhelming, why wasn't the case over? Tonight, we're going to uncover what really happened. Welcome back to the podcast. You can't unhear. When Jay pointed across the courtroom and called John the leader, it did feel like the case was over. For prosecutors, this was everything they needed. Not only had they gathered phone records, financial transfers, and immigration documents, now one of the alleged members of the organization was accusing John directly. To the public, there was no longer any doubt. The respected pastor had become the mastermind behind an international human trafficking network. But John refused to change his story. He insisted Jay was lying. And despite everything happening around him, he continued pleading not guilty. After the hearing, John was transferred to Bordeaux prison in Montreal. For someone who had spent most of his life serving churches, teaching students, and helping immigrant families, the prison felt like another world. Many inmates spoke only French. John spoke Korean and English. Simple conversations became impossible. He couldn't explain himself, couldn't make friends, couldn't even understand many of the daily announcements. Isolation slowly became another punishment. According to John, the prison was filled with violent offenders. Every day he wondered whether he would survive until trial. Meanwhile, outside prison, his family watched their lives collapse. Northern Light School, where John had worked for years, closed its doors. Students disappeared. Teachers resigned. Without John, the school lost its reputation almost overnight. His church distanced itself completely. Within the Korean community, people avoided saying his name. The accusations alone were enough to destroy decades of trust. Months passed. Then, toward the end of 2015, his lawyer arrived with unexpected news. The prosecutors wanted to make a deal. According to them, investigators had discovered several educational documents inside John's home that they believed were fraudulent. But they were willing to forget about those allegations, on one condition. John had to admit that he was guilty of running the trafficking organization. If he confessed, they would recommend a lighter outcome. He could leave prison, return to his family, and finally, put the nightmare behind him. Many people would have accepted immediately. After months behind bars, after losing almost everything, freedom must have sounded irresistible. But John refused. He told his lawyer, "I didn't fake those documents. And I didn't traffic anyone. If I admit to something I never did, I'll be free today, but guilty forever." So he stayed in prison. The prosecutors continued building their case. Time passed. Another year. Then another. In 2017, they returned with almost the exact same proposal. Again, they encouraged him to plead guilty. And again, he refused. By now, Jeon had spent years waiting for the opportunity to finally defend himself in court. His trial was scheduled for March, and for the first time in a long while, he felt hopeful. Then, something happened that nobody expected. In December 2017, a prison guard approached his cell. "You can pack your things." At first, Jeon thought there had been a mistake. Then he learned he was being released. After 32 months, he walked out of prison. Not because he had been found innocent, not because the charges had been dropped, simply because he had been granted parole while waiting for trial. He returned to Toronto. Every week he reported to police. His passport remained confiscated. His residency documents were restricted. He couldn't leave Canada. Couldn't return to ministry. Couldn't rebuild his life. He simply waited. Counting down the days until March 2018. The day he believed everything would finally be explained. March 12th arrived. Jeon walked into the courthouse alongside his lawyer, his interpreter, his cousin, and his aunt. He expected the biggest day of his life, the day he would finally answer every accusation. But when they checked the courtroom schedule, his case wasn't listed. Confused, they asked court staff. The answer left everyone speechless. The trial had been postponed indefinitely. No new date. No explanation. Nothing. Imagine waiting nearly 3 years to defend yourself, only to discover that nobody even intended to hear your case. Jeon later described this moment as one of the lowest points of his life. Because every delayed day meant another day the public believed he was guilty. Depression followed. Without work, ministry, and reputation, he struggled to see any future. People who once welcomed him now crossed the street to avoid him. Some believed that where there was smoke, there had to be fire. Surely, Canadian police couldn't have been this wrong. Then, finally, in 2019, the trial began. For the first time, the prosecution had to present its evidence inside a courtroom. Witnesses were questioned, financial records examined, phone records scrutinized. Every allegation had to survive legal examination. And something unexpected began happening. The evidence wasn't nearly as solid as everyone had assumed. Many of the connections relied heavily on interpretation rather than proof. Money transfers could also be rent. Immigration assistance could simply be part of Jeon's work helping international students. The title, leader, could refer to his management position rather than a criminal hierarchy. One by one, the prosecution's assumptions became harder to prove. Eventually, the court reached its decision. Not guilty. After 32 months behind bars, years of public humiliation, and countless headlines calling him a trafficker, the court concluded the prosecution had failed to prove its case. Just like that, Jeon walked free. But freedom didn't restore what had already been taken. His career was gone. His school, gone. His ministry, gone. His reputation, nearly impossible to rebuild. Many people remembered the accusation. Far fewer remembered the acquittal. And perhaps the hardest part? No one apologized. There was no public statement admitting mistakes. No acknowledgement of everything he had lost. So Jeon made another decision. He filed a lawsuit against the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, seeking compensation for what he believed was a deeply flawed investigation. He reportedly sought damages totaling around $100 million. Finding legal representation proved difficult. Few lawyers wanted to challenge the Canadian government. Eventually, Jeon represented much of the case himself. In 2021, the civil proceedings moved forward. According to Jeon, the court recognized that the investigation had caused enormous damage to his life. Years later, he finally began speaking publicly again, giving interviews, telling his side of the story, trying to rebuild a reputation that had taken decades to earn and only months to destroy. One detail still lingers over this case. Despite years of investigation, the people actually responsible for the trafficking network were never fully identified, which raises an uncomfortable question. When investigators become convinced they already have the right suspect, do they sometimes stop looking for the real one? We'll probably never know exactly what happened behind every decision made during this investigation. But one thing is certain. Being found not guilty doesn't erase years spent behind bars. It doesn't rebuild a collapsed career. It doesn't restore trust once it's been shattered. There's an old saying, often repeated in Korea: it is better to let 10 guilty people go free than to punish one innocent person. Whether you believe Jeon was completely innocent, or whether you think unanswered questions still remain, his story reminds us that justice isn't only about convicting the guilty, it's also about protecting the innocent. Because sometimes the punishment begins long before a verdict is ever reached. And for some people, even winning in court can never give them back the life they lost. What a case, this one. Thanks for listening if you get this far. Stay safe out there. And I'll see you on the next episode of the podcast You Can't Unhear.